Join me as we unlock the stories of the past, turning the pages of history to discover the vibrant lives, struggles, and triumphs that have shaped our world. Tonight, we travel back to an era of moats and mantles, of cold stone castles and colder ambitions. You're wrapped in silk, but you're shackled by lineage. A baby, yes, but also a bargaining chip. Your cries barely dry before whispers about your engagement begin. You're not just a daughter, you're a treaty waiting to be signed, a royal pawn in someone else's long strategic game of kings and crowns. You'll get no say in this, not now, not ever. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please post your location and local time. I love seeing where we're all falling asleep from. Wherever you are, I hope tonight brings you rest, comfort, and maybe a curious dream or two. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born beneath heavy rafters and the scent of burning myrrh. The midwives move quickly, quiet, and professional practiced in handling noblewomen who scream only when no one can hear. Your mother's face, pale with fatigue, offers no kiss. She's already calculating your value, wondering if your hair will be golden enough to tempt a prince, your bloodline pure enough to close a war. You're a princess, or a duchess, or a countess with claims stronger than a dozen minor kings. Your birthright glitters on parchment, and you're expected to uphold alliances just by existing. As soon as you can sit up in your little cot, eyes wide like saucers under your lace coif, you're on display. Courtiers coo at you, but their minds are elsewhere, perhaps already guessing which baronial brat you'll be matched with by your 6th birthday. These aren't baby showers, they're pre-wedding strategy sessions. No pressure, of course. When you're barely a toddler, you're painted. Tiny hands folded like an obedient angel, stiff in brocade that itches your skin. You're immortalized beside lions and lilies and family crests, proof that your womb is soon to be someone else's inheritance. And so the lessons begin. Not letters, those come later, if at all. Instead, you're taught silence, stillness, the art of smiling at lords with crooked teeth. You learn quickly that to cry too loudly earns a pinch from your nursemaid and a glare from your governess. Tears are unsightly. Emotion is a liability. Your father visits you rarely. When he does, it's to assess you like a merchant inspecting silk. Too short, he might mutter. Or worse, she's nearly perfect. Because perfect means desirable. And desirable means disposable. By 5, you can curtsy without tripping. You can name your ancestors back 6 generations. You know the difference between the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of Aragon, not because it matters to you, but because someone might ask when you're married, off to a complete stranger in one of them. Oh, and you speak 3 languages. Badly. But that's not the point. The point is that you're pliable, pleasant, and just exotic enough to intrigue foreign courts. There's a traveling bishop who visits once a year. He blesses you, yes, but more importantly, he reports back to Rome about your piety. At 7, you spend more time in chapel than you do playing. Not that you play much. Dolls are discouraged. Daydreams doubly so. You see other children, bastards, scullery girls, page boys running and shouting in the courtyard below. You envy them. Their knees are dirty and their faces are free. Yours is powdered and perfumed, hidden behind your mother's strict expectations and your father's silence. One day, there's a banquet in your honor. You're confused. No one ever hosts banquets for girls your age unless something's about to be announced. And you're right. After a course of glazed quail and overly sweet wine, you're not allowed to taste your betrothal is declared. You're 8. Your husband-to-be is a boy of 12 from a powerful house. His portrait arrives a month later. He's pasty with eyes like unbuttered bread. But the seal at the bottom, gold wax stamped with two lions and a sword, shines brighter than any smile could. This is the moment your life turns from background hum to ceremonial march. Historians still argue whether royal girls fully understood what engagement meant at that age. Some say you were simply proud. Others say terrified. Most likely both. You now belong to two families, and neither of them really wants to hear your thoughts on the matter. Everything becomes preparation. Your gowns grow heavier, your posture more rigid, your lessons increasingly grim. You're taught not to look men in the eye unless invited, not to eat before others, not to laugh too loudly. Your body becomes a project, not yours, of course, but one to be honed, tamed, and shipped like a prized falcon to a new cage. By 10, you know that certain herbs stop bleeding, others start it. You've heard whispers from the older maids about a woman's burden, and you dread whatever it means. At 11, your betrothed's cousin visits with his entourage. You meet them in the great hall where you stand still for an hour while adults murmur about dowries treaties and how your hips are starting to look promising. You do not know what they mean. You will, too soon. The next spring you begin bleeding. Your mother hands you a linen cloth and a necklace with a holy relic. Your maid tells you you're a woman now. You want to cry. Instead, you nod. Because now finally you are of use. The summons arrives not long after. Your wedding is set. 12 years old and bound in silk, your childhood ends before it ever began. And no one, not even the chapel statues, seems to notice. Your wedding dress weighs more than your legs can carry. It's stitched with pearls and promises layers upon layers of brocade, so thick you can barely breathe. You waddle forward like a nervous duckling head, bowed beneath a jeweled circlet that pinches at your scalp. The train behind you is longer than your last birthday celebration. Everyone is watching. They murmur about how beautiful you look, though you suspect they're mostly admiring the fabric. Your cheeks are flushed not from excitement, but from terror and tightly fastened corsetry. You feel like an ornate pastry about to be served on a diplomatic platter. He stands beside you, your husband-to-be. Older, taller, smelling faintly of wine and something earthy like damp wool and ambition. He looks at you and tries to smile, but it's not warm. It's polite. And that's the best you can hope for. The priest begins a ceremony in Latin. You understand a few words here and there, mostly the bits about obedience and unity. Your hands tremble in his. He notices briefly and tightens his grip, not unkindly, just firmly, as if to say, "This is happening whether you're ready or not." And it is. You're 12. The feast afterward lasts until dawn. Roasted peacock, sugared fruit, endless wine poured into goblets you aren't allowed to touch. Minstrels sing songs written in your honor. One rhyme is about your golden hair, another hints that you'll bear strong sons. You sit beside your new husband and try to laugh at the jokes. You're not sure if they're funny or just terrifying. Your cheeks hurt from smiling. Later that night, the ladies in waiting strip you of your finery layer by layer. You feel like an onion peeled for someone else's supper. They bathe you in rosewater, comb your hair until it shines like flax, and whisper instructions you don't want to hear. No one asks if you're afraid. That would be silly. Fear isn't bridal. You lie down in the wedding bed, heart pounding in your throat, and wait. Some royal brides were left alone on their first night, especially if they were young. Others weren't so lucky. Historians still argue whether consummation was always expected or if there were symbolic exceptions. Either way, the point is made: your body now belongs to your husband and through him to his lineage. The next morning, your sheets are inspected by older women with hard eyes and calloused hands. There's nodding, there's gossip, There's quiet satisfaction that everything is proceeding as expected. You're praised for being a dutiful wife. You don't feel like anything at all. From that day forward, your life becomes a series of schedules: morning prayers, lessons in court, etiquette embroidery circles, polite dinners, more prayers. You're not expected to participate in decisions, only to observe, smile, and reinforce alliances with your presence. You're an accessory, a velvet bookmark in your husband's political career. Your quarters are beautiful but cold. Stone walls dressed with tapestries depicting saints and battles. The windows are narrow slits good for archers but awful for sunshine. Even in summer, the chambers feel damp and drafty. You wrap yourself in furs. Not because it's fashionable, though it is, but because you're constantly freezing. The only warmth comes from the small fireplace in the corner and the rare moments when someone remembers you're in the room. Your servants are loyal, sort of. They obey, they curtsy, they scurry. But you've already learned some report back to your husband, others to your mother-in-law. One may even write to your father, so you speak carefully, smile often, reveal nothing. It's exhausting. Every now and then you receive a letter from home. Your mother writes about the garden, about your younger sister's upcoming betrothal, about the bishop's gout. She rarely asks about you, and you rarely answer truthfully. You write back that your husband is kind, that the court is welcoming, that you are content. These are lies, of course, but necessary ones. Letters can be intercepted. And besides, who would believe you if you said you cry most nights? You try to fill your days. You pick up a lute and pluck tunelessly for hours. You feed sparrows from your windowsill. You memorize the names of all the saints in a dusty manuscript the chaplain gave you. One is said to protect women in childbirth. You bookmark her page with trembling fingers. Your husband visits you occasionally. Sometimes he brings gifts: an ivory comb, a silk scarf from Venice, a carved prayer box. These are not gestures of love, but of ownership. You are his bride, his property, his symbol. It's important that you look the part. And so you do. One day during a formal dinner, he calls you the jewel of my court. Everyone applauds. You smile on cue. No one sees how tightly you grip your goblet beneath the table. Soon the whispers begin. Is she with child? She looked pale today. She didn't eat much at supper. You hear them all echoing through corridors like a bad song you can't forget. You know what's expected of you now. Your ladies help prepare your body like sacred ground. Certain herbs are added to your bath. Amulets placed beneath your pillow. Special prayers whispered at dawn. All to ensure conception. All to ensure you perform your ultimate holy function. Because being married isn't the final goal, it's just the opening act. The real performance begins when you become a vessel, a factory, a womb dressed in velvet. You press a hand to your belly and whisper to no one, please don't let it hurt too much. If you're lucky, your first child will be a son. If you're very lucky, you'll survive the birth. But luck is a slippery thing, especially when you're 12 years old and already running out of childhood. You don't remember the exact day it happens. Maybe it's the faint nausea at breakfast, the sudden aversion to honeyed milk, or the way your chambermaid gasps when helping you lace your gown and notices you've filled out. But soon there's no doubt. You're pregnant. The entire court seems to know before you do. Whispers flit like moths in candlelight. Maids trade gossip by the laundry hearth. Old men nod in approval. Your mother-in-law begins sending you stewed pears and relics from obscure saints known for easy labor. A priest appears with oils and a knowing smile. And your husband. He beams, briefly, then rides off to hunt boars and disappears for 3 weeks. You spend those weeks staring at the ceiling. Being pregnant in a medieval palace is not a private affair. Your body becomes public property. Physicians prod your belly with cold fingers and muddled theories. They argue about the humors. Some advise bleeding. Others suggest leeches because, of course, nothing says healthy mother like being drained of your remaining strength. Your cravings are cataloged. Your swelling feet become subjects of court discussion. She glows, they say, as though that's enough to compensate for the vomiting and the constant ache in your back. One lady insists you eat saffron to make the baby golden. Another warns that too much music might cause your child to be born melancholic. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed these things or simply performed belief out of desperation. But, belief or not, you nod and obey. It's safer that way. You are told to rest, though, never truly allowed to. You're expected to pray more often now. Your confessor visits every morning lest your child arrive burdened with your unspoken sins. You kneel on aching knees, whispering apologies for things you can't name. Sometimes you dream the baby is born with your mother-in-law's face. You wake in a cold sweat. By your 7th month, you've been moved to the confinement room. It's a dim chamber with covered windows because light, they say, can harm the baby. The air is thick with incense and superstition. No men are allowed in. Just your lady's a midwife and the endless creak of the floorboards under your pacing feet. It is stifling. It is lonely. It is terrifying. You do not attend Mass anymore. The risk of slipping on the chapel steps is too great. Instead, a priest delivers communion by your bedside, looking at your belly as though it holds not just a child, but a prophecy. And then one night it begins. The pain is not gradual. It arrives like thunder. You scream and are told to hush. Your child must not enter the world through chaos. You bite your own hand. You crush the linen bedsheets in bloodied fist. Hours pass, or days. Time is meaningless now. Finally, there's a cry. A tiny, wet, undeniable cry. The midwife lifts a squirming bundle into the candlelight. Someone gasps. Someone else mutters a prayer. You can't see clearly. You blink through tears and sweat and the thick veil of exhaustion. It's a girl, someone says gently, carefully, and silence falls. A girl. No cheers, no cannons, no rushing messengers, no bells rung in the cathedral. Just the rustle of disappointment. They wrap her in linen and place her at your side. She's warm, tiny. Her eyes blink up at you, unfocused and ancient. You feel something twist in your chest, not regret, not shame, but something sharper. Love, perhaps, or defiance. She's perfect, you whisper. Your mother-in-law says nothing. Later, when your husband returns, he nods, kisses your forehead like a priest, giving last rites, and says, "Next time, perhaps. Next time." Your next child comes barely a year later. Then another. And another. Some arrive early and leave too soon. One doesn't cry at all. That one they take away in silence, and no one ever mentions them again. You begin to understand your value is counted in male heirs, not heartbeats. You sit through long meals with a court physician estimating your womb like a harvest yield. You nod as noblewomen share horror stories about breech births and deadly fevers, all while smiling behind jeweled goblets. You wear a rosary like armor. You pray to saints whose relics you've kissed so many times the silver's worn down. Your body becomes unfamiliar, wider, weaker. Scars trace your belly like ancient river maps. Your hands tremble when you try to sew. You begin to limp when walking down the stone stairs. But you keep going because you must. Because a queen who does not bear sons is a danger to her realm, a liability, a pretext for war annulment or quiet exile. You've seen it happen to others. One queen was sent back to her father belly still soft with milk. Another was confined to a convent, her letters never reaching anyone who mattered. At night when the halls fall silent, and only the wind moans through the turrets you sit by the fire. Your daughter's asleep beside you and wonder, would life have been different if you were born a boy? Would you ride? Would you hunt? Would you be free? Probably not. But the illusion is a lullaby and you let yourself drift. Your ladies are quieter these days. One was dismissed after whispering that a local healer had a root that could delay the seed. Another disappeared entirely after being caught with a book on herbs and the female body. You do not ask where she went. You do not ask anything anymore. Instead, you keep your head high. You hold your children tightly. You smile at your husband in public. And when you're alone, you trace the outline of a tiny shoe once worn by the child who never cried. You keep it hidden in a box beneath your bed. Because that too is part of your story. And no one ever asks about your story. The palace you now call home is magnificent in the way a mausoleum is magnificent. Impressive, cold, and always a little too quiet. From the outside, it rises like a wedding cake built by a stonemason with grand ambitions and a poor sense of insulation. Inside, it's a maze of drafty galleries, echoing stairwells, and fireplaces that do more for appearance than warmth. You live here. You're meant to be grateful. After all, it's a royal residence. There are tapestries on every wall, each one a proud depiction of a myth, a miracle, or a long-dead uncle smiting someone. There's always someone smiting someone. But the reality is more sobering. The ceilings leak in spring. The hallways smell faintly of boiled cabbage. And no matter how many braziers your servants light, your toes remain numb until May. Still, you learn to navigate it. You glide through the rooms with practiced grace, your feet silent beneath layers of embroidered linen. You know which floorboards groan outside your chambers and which windows rattle at the slightest gust. The corridor near the chapel carries sound too easily. You learn that the hard way during one of your less dignified sobbing fits. The throne room is the worst. Not because it's ugly, it's actually rather lovely, all gilded arches and mosaic floors, but because of what it represents. You're not permitted to sit on the throne, of course. You perch on a stool beside it, smiling while important men discuss matters you're not expected to understand. You're part of the decor, a very well-dressed piece of decor. The cushions are thin and the drafts are plentiful, but you sit straight. You nod at the ambassadors. You smile at their wives. You make polite noises at jokes you don't get. Your role is to radiate grace. Not power, heavens, no, just grace. Preferably silent grace. There are rules about what you can wear in each room. Blue for the chapel, crimson for court dinners, white for funerals, and always, always modest necklines. Unless, of course, your husband wants to show off your beauty to visiting dignitaries, in which case cleavage becomes a matter of national importance. The irony isn't lost on you. You've lost count of the receptions. They blur together into a dizzying parade of uncomfortable shoes and overcooked venison. Your favorite moment of any feast is when you're finally allowed to retire, usually around midnight. Your cheeks sore from smiling, your ears ringing from music you never asked for. You don't sleep well. No one does in these rooms. Between the creaking of beams and the wind howling through arrow slits, the night offers no peace. Sometimes you imagine the ghosts of former queens drifting down the halls. You wonder what they'd think of you, another silent bride surviving out of sheer determination and etiquette. Your personal chamber is considered luxurious. It has a hearth, a writing desk, and a carved canopy bed so tall you need a footstool to climb into it. You also have a parrot. No one knows why. It was a gift from a visiting duke who thought all royal women needed something pretty and noisy. Fitting. You name the parrot Eleanor. She squawks at inopportune moments and occasionally curses in Flemish. You suspect this is deliberate. One day, as you walk through the garden, one of the few places you can actually breathe, you see your husband laughing with the lady you don't recognize. He's laughing in that carefree way he never does around you. Their heads are close. Too close. Your lady-in-waiting notices. She's just a cousin, she murmurs. But the look in her eyes says otherwise. You file it away in the mental cabinet where you keep other polite lies. The one labeled things we don't discuss. Later that evening at dinner, he barely speaks to you. He spends more time arguing about hawking regulations than asking how you're feeling. When you excuse yourself early, no one notices. You pass your mother-in-law in the hallway. She raises an eyebrow. You must learn not to show weakness, dear, she says as if grief were a spilled soup bowl to be mopped up discreetly. You return to your chamber and sit by the fire. Eleanor squawks something unrepeatable. You don't cry. You're far past crying. You just stare into the flames and count the seconds between each crackle. Sometimes you remember your old home. It wasn't warmer, but it was simpler. You wonder what happened to your childhood nurse. If your old dog is still alive. If your sister ever married that sad-eyed duke from the coast. You reach for your embroidery. You've nearly finished the unicorn tapestry. It's nothing special, mostly blues and creams, but the stitches are tiny perfect. It's the one thing in your world you can control. Thread doesn't lie. Needlepoint doesn't whisper behind your back. One afternoon, the court hosts a hunting tournament. You're expected to watch from the grandstand, wrapped in sable, smiling, politely pretending to enjoy the blood sport of noblemen trying to prove something with spears. Your husband rides out with his hunting falcon, more regal than you've seen him in months. He looks back at you once. Just once. You raise a gloved hand in acknowledgement. That's all you can do. Hours later, he returns muddy and victorious. There's blood on his boots. Someone gives him wine. He toasts to the glory of our house, and all eyes turn to you. You raise your goblet. You smile. Inside, you feel nothing at all. Later that night, when the hall has emptied and the laughter has faded, you undress slowly. Carefully. You notice a bruise on your hip in the shape of the chair arm. You rub it absent-mindedly, not even surprised. You lie down beside your husband. He's already asleep, breathing deeply, smelling faintly of leather and pine. You stare at the ceiling beams until dawn. Your husband, for all his titles and armor, is mostly a ghost. He passes through your days like smoke, visible, heavy with presence, but never really touching you. Sometimes he is kind, brings you trinkets from the market, or compliments your gown before a feast. Other times he is distant, aloof, more interested in hunting hounds and taxation policy than in the shape of your thoughts. And occasionally he is cruel. Not with fists, those leave marks after all, but with silence. With sharp words said in a soft voice. With absences that stretch for weeks. You grow used to the unpredictability. It's almost comforting. You learn how to read his boots at the doorway to tell what kind of mood he's in. If they're muddy, he's likely cheerful. If they're polished, he's been arguing with his advisors. If they're missing entirely, well, he's in someone else's bed tonight. You're not shocked anymore. Disappointment has dulled to routine. At court, no one says anything outright, but the glances linger. A smirk here. A cough to cover a whisper there. One of your husband's favorites, a blonde with too much perfume and too little tact, once handed you a silk scarf she accidentally left in his chambers. It was not an accident. You smiled, said thank you, folded it neatly, had it burned. You're a royal woman. You're not allowed rage. Only frost. Historians still argue whether medieval queens truly tolerated their husbands' infidelities, or if they just mastered the art of pretending. Some queens wrote secret letters. Others paid spies. A few, very few, even took lovers of their own quietly, dangerously. But most endured. because to leave a husband to openly defy him would be to collapse an entire treaty or worse, ignite a war. So you stay and smile. And sit beside him at banquets, nodding as he makes yet another joke about Saxon wine or the bishop's gout. You've become fluent in court performance. Your only refuge lies in routine. You wake before dawn when the castle is still whispering its secrets and creaks and sighs. You dress with your lady's help layers upon layers of linen, wool, velvet, and silk. Even your shoes require effort. Sometimes by the time you're fully clothed, you're already tired. Then there's chapel. Always chapel. You kneel on cold stone and mouth the prayers so often you could recite them backward. Your knees ache, but you don't complain. You need the priest to believe you're pious. Everyone does, especially since your husband is less consistent in his devotional attendance. After prayers, you sit for hours embroidering. Birds, angels, heraldry. You sew until your fingers cramp and your eyes blur. Once you accidentally stitched a rabbit with a lion's tail, no one noticed. Mid-morning brings correspondence. You dictate letters to foreign courts, to your mother, to other noble women playing the same quiet game. You always sound cheerful, gracious, inoffensive, even when you're seething. Then there's lunch. A formal affair, several courses. Always meet even on days when your stomach churns. Your husband rarely joins you. When he does, he talks too much, or not at all. Afternoons vary. Sometimes music, sometimes diplomatic visits. Occasionally you're paraded before envoys like a prized falcon to show the realm's domestic stability. Look, she's smiling. Isn't everything lovely? Evenings bring feasts again. You've sat through so many feasts you've memorized the rhythm trumpet procession seating. Pies with birds baked inside, jugglers, lutes, everyone pretending they enjoy cold venison and tepid wine. You've learned to keep the goblet in your left hand, makes it easier to gesture with your right, and avoid sipping too quickly. Wine makes you speak freely. You can't afford that. You're asked to dance sometimes. The steps are tedious, the smiles exhausting. Your slippers pinch. Your corset cuts into your ribs. But you twirl because twirling distracts everyone from asking why your husband hasn't looked at you all evening. You retire late. Always tired, always stiff. Your body aches in places you never knew could ache. Some nights your husband joins you. Other nights he doesn't. You don't ask. You no longer expect. Instead, you light a small candle beside your bed and stare at its flicker. You think about what life could have been if you'd been born into a different family. If you'd married a kinder man. If you'd had a brother to inherit the pressure. But then you remember your life is the consequence of too many ifs. You dream sometimes of running, escaping, just walking into the woods and not looking back. Living in a small cottage and baking your own bread. Laughable, really. You don't know how to bake bread. You barely know how to untie your own corset. Still, the dream comforts you. You once asked your confessor what heaven was like. He told you it was a place without pain, where everyone knew their role and peace reigned. You almost laughed. That sounded exactly like your life, except you still had pain. A merchant recently brought a mirror from Italy. Polished glass. A marvel. You peer into it now and then, shocked by the woman staring back. She's regal. Beautiful even. But tired. Her eyes hold too many secrets. Her mouth is set in a line that rarely bends anymore. She looks older than you remember. You're 23. You're pregnant again. You feel it before anyone confirms it, before the midwife presses her cold fingers to your belly, before your ladies exchange those practiced glances, before the court physician begins making more frequent appearances with his vile tinctures and contradictory advice. It's a quiet dread blooming behind your ribs like mold. You don't tell anyone at first. You wait. Because sometimes it doesn't last. Sometimes the bleeding comes early and everyone pretends nothing happened. But not this time. The child grows. Your ankles swell. Your back aches so badly you have to hold onto furniture to stand. And the same cycle begins again, the holy relics. The cautious congratulations, the prayers whispered louder than your own thoughts. You lose count of how many times this has happened now. 4, 6. More your body, once your own has become a stretch of trampled farmland, expected to yield over and over regardless of drought or ruin. And your husband. He seems satisfied, for now. A quiet nod. A perfunctory kiss on your forehead. He might even sit beside you during supper without reaching for his goblet too quickly. Small mercies. This child had better be a boy. Because you're running out of time. You feel it in the way people look at you. Your mother-in-law, the steward, the priest who now includes subtle pleas in his sermons. God favors fruitful unions. He said last week his gaze conveniently aimed at your corner of the chapel. If your next child is a girl, you may not be queen for long. That's not an exaggeration. You've heard the stories. One noblewoman was locked away in a crumbling manor, her name never spoken again after her 5th daughter was born. Another fled to a convent, shaved her head, and claimed to hear voices better to be thought mad than merely useless. And then there was the quiet tragedy of Queen Isabeau, who gave birth to a son who died in infancy. Her husband blamed her, claimed she'd cursed the child. No one questioned it. She was sent to a nunnery before the body was cold. Historians still argue whether these stories were exaggerated or routine, whether queens wielded any protection at all when their wombs failed to meet expectations. You already know the answer, so you pray. Not just for a child, but for a boy. A healthy boy who lives past his 2nd birthday. One who doesn't catch a cough in winter and waste away like the others. You light candles until the wax pools in sad, shiny puddles. You try everything. You drink infusions of rosemary and sage. You sleep with a silver spoon beneath your pillow. You even allow that creepy monk to mutter blessings over your belly despite his breath smelling like onions and old leather. You endure the gossip. She's looking pale, they say. She's walking oddly. Do you think she's carrying high or low? As if the position of the baby in your womb might determine the stability of the realm. You stop attending feasts, your gowns no longer fit. You eat alone mostly broth and fruit, and your chambermaids try not to look at the stretch marks tracing your hips like vines on ancient stone. Your daughter, your first, sits by your bedside most days, humming to herself, braiding scraps of ribbon. She doesn't understand the pressure. She's too young, but her presence soothes you in ways no relic or physician ever could. She tells you she wants to be queen one day. You smile. You don't say the truth, I hope you don't. The birthing room smells of blood sweat and the sharp sting of fear. It always does. The same midwife, the same priest, the same low murmuring of ladies reciting prayers through trembling lips. You scream. Bite down. The pain is a beast now. You've met it before. You know its face. It tears through you, clawing and hot, and just when you think you've nothing left, it ends. There's silence, then a cry, then another silence, longer this time. Your head is spinning. You taste iron. You see shadows moving in slow, heavy waves. Is it a boy, you ask? Or maybe you just think the words. Your voice is too weak to be sure. Yes, someone says. Then nothing. You wake hours later, wrapped in linen damp with sweat. Your daughter is asleep on a stool. Your midwife is dozing in the corner. The priest is gone. You are alive. And so is the boy. The court rejoices. Bells ring. Minstrels compose verses. A feast is planned in your son's honor before you've even sat up. You're exhausted, broken, hollowed out, but victorious. You did it. You proved your worth. Your place is secured. For now. Your husband visits the next morning. He brings a gold rattle and a rare smile. He kisses your forehead like a man acknowledging a political victory. Well done, he says, as if you'd negotiated a trade agreement or signed a peace treaty. He looks at the baby briefly, then leaves to attend council. You stare at the bundle beside you. Tiny fingers, a perfect mouth. He is your son, and already he belongs more to the realm than to you. Still, you rest your hand on his chest and whisper a lullaby. You don't remember where you learned it. Maybe from your nurse all those years ago. Maybe from your own mother, though she rarely sang. Your voice cracks halfway through. The tears come silently. This is love, you realize, raw and inconvenient, dangerous. You would burn every cathedral for this child, tear down every alliance, defy every man in the kingdom. But instead, you sit still. You do what's expected. You smile, because now more than ever, your silence is your survival. You have a son now, and suddenly you matter again. Not that you didn't before, of course not. You were always important. But now you're vital, strategic. You've produced an heir, and with that a degree of power cloaked in maternal silk. People bow lower. Speak softer. Even your husband, who once regarded you like a necessary ledger entry, treats you with something nearing respect. He offers your opinion during supper. Once, then forgets. Still, it's something. But the power is borrowed, not truly yours. It pulses through your son, still soft and squinting in his cradle. They call him the future. They call you the mother of the future. Close but not the same. Every morning you're awakened by the wails of a child who doesn't yet know he's a national investment. You nurse him in a room perfumed with lavender and the faint decay of old stone. The windows are cracked open for fresh air, though fresh is a generous term in a castle filled with horses' hearth smoke and 14 generations of mildew. He has your eyes, and your husband's mouth. When he smiles, which is rare, he looks briefly like no one at all. Just himself. A miracle in a place where everyone is labeled and positioned before they can walk. Your mother-in-law appears more often now. She inspects the child with the same sharp gaze she once reserved for ledger books and kitchen inventories. Strong lungs, she says. Decent weight. Let's hope his legs straighten properly. You resist the urge to hiss. The child is carted around like a holy relic. Wet nurses and tutors hover before his teeth even break. Priests bless him weakly. A nursemaid is dismissed for not bowing before picking him up, and yet in the quiet hours of the night, it's you he reaches for. You rock him in the same chair your great-aunt was born, in carved walnut likely infested with stories and woodworm alike. You hum lullabies no one taught you. Sometimes you whisper secrets into his ear as if he can understand. Be kind. Trust slowly. Don't let them turn you into stone. You are terrified, because now you understand what's at stake. A prince is not a child. He is a target, a prophecy, a pawn. And you, his mother, are simultaneously shield and weakness. If anything happens to him, your value vanishes. So you become obsessed with his safety. You taste his food before he eats it. You sleep with a dagger beneath your pillow. You memorize the names of every servant assigned to his chambers. You bribe the midwife for information. You test the locks on the nursery door 3 times each night. Historians still argue whether royal women were truly paranoid or simply realistic. Given how many royal children mysteriously fell ill or slipped downstairs, it's difficult to blame you for suspecting every cough is conspiracy. One winter he catches a fever. Just a small one. The court physician says it's nothing milk teeth heat or some other nonsense, but you don't sleep for 3 days. You sit beside him, wiping his forehead, whispering prayers you haven't used in years. When he recovers, you collapse in relief and sob into your embroidery for hours. Your husband pats your shoulder. You're very devoted, he says. Devoted. As though this were an act. As though love were a performance like court dances and feast day processions. But then again, in this world, isn't it? Soon your second child arrives, a daughter. You love her instantly, fiercely, and quietly because too much affection might look unseemly. Your husband shrugs when the midwife announces it. We already have one, he mutters. You smile through your teeth. This daughter is curious, quick to laugh, always climbing things she shouldn't. You call her your wildflower. She tugs at your braids during Mass and once bit a visiting nobleman. You gave her an extra honeyed fig that night. Your children are your kingdom now. While the realm plots and feasts and sighs about rainfall and taxes, you create a world within stone walls, a quiet fortress of stories, lullabies, and the scent of rose oil. But it's not enough to love them. You must also prepare them. You arrange tutors. Choose handmaidens with no noble ties. You begin drafting letters, marriage proposals still years away but already looming like storm clouds. You study politics, economics. You ask questions at dinner even when your husband rolls his eyes. You are quietly becoming dangerous. There's a moment, just one that stays with you. A visiting dignitary asks your son now, toddling with confidence, who his favorite person is. The boy looks around the chamber, considers the array of jeweled shoes and brocaded knees, then points to you. You, hair hastily braided, fingers ink-stained from letters, lips cracked from praying too much in dry air. Everyone laughs. It's adorable. But you feel it an invisible shift, a thread pulled loose. Your child sees you, and that makes others see you too. You're not just a vessel anymore. You're a presence, which means you're a problem. You begin to notice the whispers. They never say your name outright. That would be too obvious. Instead, it's Her Grace, or the Mother, or sometimes just a well-placed pause followed by a knowing glance. Servants who used to curtsy without question now bow slightly slower. Courtiers who once sought your favor now seek the company of other women widows with dowries to remarry daughters with ambitious fathers. It's subtle but unmistakable. Power, it seems, is seasonal. Yours is already fading. You've done your duty. You've birthed an heir. The novelty has worn off. Now you're just another fixture in the court ornamental, perhaps respectable, but mostly quiet. You've gone from precious to predictable. And predictability is dangerous in a place that feeds on novelty. Your mother-in-law begins making more decisions again. She chooses your daughter's tutors. She offers unsolicited advice about your wardrobe. She arranges your seating at feast with a little too much intention. Once she remarks, "You're very calm these days. Some women get restless after bearing sons." You sip your wine and say nothing, but inside you're boiling. Your husband. He's returned to his old rhythm-hunting trips, council meetings, the occasional smirking stroll through the gardens with his cousin. When he does speak to you, it's about the children or politics or logistics for the summer tour. Never about you. Never about anything soft. You ask him once if he still loves you. He blinks as though the word confuses him. "We have children," he says. "Of course I do." You nod. Then excuse yourself and spend the rest of the evening in the chapel, staring at the stained glass until the saints blur into watercolor ghosts. There's an art to surviving this phase. You've seen others fail. One queen drank too much and became a cautionary tale. Another buried herself in religion and refused to speak. Another grew sharp and political until she was exiled. So you adopt a new strategy in visibility with teeth. You say less. Smile more. Host small feast with just the right guest. You begin funding a few abbeys quietly, of course. You send gifts to noble families whose sons may one day serve your son. You write letters in perfect, cautious prose, each sentence a balancing act between deference and quiet command. And you watch. There's something about a stone corridor at dusk that invites secrets. You learn which maids gossip and which merely repeat. You learn which chamber doors open too often. You know when a servant's shoes are too clean or a steward's accounts too vague. You've become fluent in silence. One day you stumble upon 2 pages whispering behind the stables. You only catch one phrase. Wouldn't be the first time a cup went missing. You smile, step forward, and ask them very gently whether the kitchens need new copper. They don't speak to each other again for a week. Historians still debate how much influence royal women truly had in daily court affairs. Some claim queens were little more than glorified figureheads. Others argue they were the shadow architects of policy managing alliances and information with quiet precision. You know the truth is both. You hold no official power, but everyone knows you could break someone's future with a single poorly timed rumor. You just choose not to. For now, you begin keeping a journal. Not a dramatic tome of woes, just observations, notes, names, a ledger of loyalty. It's hidden beneath a loose floor tile behind the hearth, wrapped in old letters and dried lavender. You also begin dreaming again. Not nightmares, those are old friends by now. These dreams are sharper, clearer. You dream of walking through a forest with no crown on your head, of riding a horse without an escort, of laughing so hard you fall into the grass and don't worry who sees. You wake from these dreams with a strange ache behind your ribs, the ache of remembering you're still alive. Your daughter, now nearly 7, starts asking questions. Why do people bow to Papa and not to you? Why do I have to curtsy to my cousin when he picks his nose at dinner? Can I be queen if I want to? You pause at the last one. Then you crouch beside her, take her tiny hands and say, you can be anything as long as you remember who you are. She nods, clearly unsatisfied. I still think I'd be better than him, she mutters. You smile. The days stretch on, measured in ceremonies, feast days, and the ever-looming question of your son's education. Your husband wants him trained in battle. Your confessor insists on theology. You want him taught empathy. That, of course, is the most controversial suggestion of all. So you teach it yourself. At night, after prayers, you tell him stories not of saints and kings, but of the kitchen boy who saved the duke's life, or the merchant girl who tricked a tyrant with riddles. Stories where cleverness matters, where kindness wins, where power isn't always measured by swords or bloodlines. Sometimes he falls asleep in your lap. Other times he listens with wide eyes and says, will I have to be like Papa? You kiss his forehead. You'll have to be like you. And you pray, really pray that will be enough. Because this world is a cold one, built of stone and whispers, and you've learned how to survive it. But your children, they'll have to learn how to change it. You sit like a statue. Not one of those heroic sword-wielding ones with pigeons on their heads, but the other kind, elegant, still slightly sorrowful. A marble queen on display, forever gazing into the distance while men talk loudly beside her. You're in the Great Hall again. A feast again. This one is in honor of some distant cousin returning from the Crusades. Though, judging by his vacant stare and the way he flinches at the sound of clattering goblets, the crusade has clearly returned with him. Your gown itches. Your head aches. The peacock on your plate looks more alive than you feel. Your job is simple tonight: sit, smile, and look expensive. You do. Across the table, your husband argues with a bishop about land rights. You could recite his arguments by heart. You've heard them a dozen times, recycled like stale bread. To your right, a young nobleman tries to flirt by complimenting your ring. He's 14. You nod politely and redirect the conversation to theology. Court life is a theater, and you've become the understudy who never leaves the stage. You scan the room. There she is again. The lady with the lilac sleeves and the too eager laugh. Your husband's cousin. She's pouring him wine leaning just slightly too close. He pretends not to notice. You pretend not to care. You don't confront him anymore. That dance is old. He denies. You fume. Then nothing changes. Instead, you found something better than fury detachment. Let her pour. Let him smile. Let the court whisper. You'll outlast them all. But it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Your ladies know better than to speak of it. Instead, they fluff your pillows and tighten your laces and pretend not to notice when you stare too long into the fireplace. You wonder sometimes what would happen if you simply left. Rode off one morning on a chestnut horse with nothing but bread coins and the clothes on your back. Disguised yourself as a merchant's widow and vanished into a village that's never heard your name. No one would believe it. Queens don't disappear. They fade. That's what you're doing now. Quietly. You're still young, but the shine has dulled. The poets don't mention your eyes anymore. The minstrels don't write songs in your honor. You're mentioned in prayers, not ballads. Your role is that of the respected matron, the pillar, the symbol. You know what that really means, background. You begin noticing the ways you're overlooked. Your advice is politely ignored. Your presence at council is unnecessary. Your ideas for the harvest festival are sweet, but best left to the stewards. You've become invisible while sitting in the brightest room in the castle. You could scream. Instead, you commission a new tapestry. This is not unusual. Noble women often commission tapestries, scenes of saints' courtly love battles never fought. But yours is different. You design it yourself. No unicorns, no dashing knights. You choose a garden, wild, tangled, filled with herbs and unruly roses. At the center is a woman seated calmly feeding a raven. The court doesn't understand it, but you don't care. It hangs in your solar now where you can see it every morning. A quiet rebellion woven in silk. One afternoon, a visiting noblewoman lingers in front of it. She doesn't speak. She just nods slowly and you nod back. You begin writing more letters. To abbesses. To dowager queens. To women who rule from behind fans and veils. You exchange poems, prayers, and plans. One writes to say she's started her own scriptorium. Another mentions hiding banned books behind her altar. You feel something stir. A network, a sisterhood, unseen but rooted deep. Historians rarely write about this part. The soft diplomacy, the quiet resistance. The way women built empires between the lines of their husbands' letters. You teach your daughter to read them. Not just the words, but the gaps, the pauses, the silence between regretfully and due to illness. She's clever. She sees what you mean. She's watching. Your son is growing too. Taller now. Shoulders squaring like his father's. But his eyes, those are still yours. Sharp, soft, curious. You teach him how to listen, how to really listen. One day he asks you, why do people only listen to father? You smile, because he speaks the loudest. Can't you, he asks. You consider, I speak in other ways. He doesn't understand, not yet, but he will. Your legacy, you realize, is not carved in marble. It is passed through bedtime stories between stitches in the way your daughter watches the steward too closely, or the way your son hesitates before giving an order just to think. You're no longer decoration. You're architecture. And though no one sees it, the walls are shifting. There's a new fashion at court, egg-white masks to tighten the skin. Supposedly they give your face a luminous glow, though mostly they just smell like chickens and crack if you so much as smile. You try one once. Your skin itches for days. Beauty, you're reminded, is a battlefield, and you're losing ground. The younger ladies have arrived. Bright-eyed and perfumed, they flutter through the halls like butterflies too new to realize how short their season will be. They giggle behind painted fans, spill scandalous poetry at the supper table, and whisper about foreign creams that promise eternal youth. One of them has been wearing mouse hair eyebrows glued above her real ones. For fullness, she explains batting lashes you suspect were stolen from a taxidermist. You nod politely and excuse yourself before your expression betrays you. You were once like them. Painted, perfumed, a glittering prize at a feasting table. You remember the way men's eyes followed you not out of admiration exactly, but appraisal, like livestock or gold. It felt powerful then. It feels ridiculous now. And yet there's still pressure. You sit for hours while your ladies apply cosmetics, crushed pearls for a glow, lead-based powders. For paleness, mulberry juice for a slight blush. You know they're toxic. Everyone does. But to look sickly is to look important. No one wants a queen who looks too healthy. That would be common. Your teeth are scrubbed with salt and burnt rosemary. Your nails are rubbed with lemon to whiten them. Your hair is singed at the ends to encourage growth. The beauty rituals are endless, exhausting, often dangerous. Historians rarely mention them. They document wars and treaties, but skip the fact that royal women burned off their hairlines to achieve the high forehead look of the moment, or that they plucked their eyelashes, or bleached their skin with mercury. You've tried all of it, and still you are aging. Your mirror is no longer kind. You see the fine lines at the corners of your mouth, the softening beneath your chin, the way your hands no longer match the silk gloves you wear to dinner. One day you find a gray hair, you pluck it, then another, then you stop. Because really, what's the point? A courtesan once said that beauty is borrowed time. You now understand what she meant. But your value cannot rest in cheekbones and skin tone. Not anymore. You refuse to let it. So you begin spending more time in your gardens. You don't grow roses. You grow things that sting and cure rue feverfew wormwood yarrow. Your ladies wrinkle their noses. Too bitter, they say. Too strange. You smile and keep planting. You read old herbal manuscripts in your solar. Some are smuggled from Italy. Others were misplaced by monks. You learn how to make poultices for joint pain teas, for sleep salves for burns. You begin offering them discreetly to other women at court. Lady Cecily, whose back aches in winter. The young baroness who fears her husband. Even your mother-in-law who pretends she doesn't take the syrup you leave on her table. You never speak of it, but they remember. One night a maid knocks on your chamber door. She's trembling. She doesn't speak. Just holds out her hand bleeding from some unseen injury. You clean the wound yourself. Bind it. Give her a sweet biscuit to calm her. She cries silently and bows 3 times before leaving. You don't tell anyone. But the next day, someone leaves a small pouch of saffron on your pillow. It's rare, expensive, and clearly a gift. You are no longer just a queen. You are becoming a quiet healer. The chapel still expects you, of course. And you still go. You sit beneath painted ceilings depicting saints with halos and flat feet. The sermons are the same. God loves obedience. Suffering is grace. You nod and smile and let the words drift past. But your prayers have changed. You no longer pray for favor or beauty or even strength. You pray for clarity. And sometimes when the light hits the stained glass just right, you almost feel it. There's an old priest at court who dislikes you. He's been muttering about unnatural knowledge in women and men's affairs. He once publicly scolded you for suggesting the palace infirmary be restocked with herbs. Your husband ignored him, but you didn't. You waited, listened, learned. Last week he slipped on the wet chapel stones and bruised his hip. You sent a poultice with a message for your continued comfort. He sent back a jar of honey. You're not sure whether it's a thank you or a warning. Possibly both. You've learned to live in ambiguity. The truth is, royal women have always had to navigate contradictions. You must be soft but unbreakable, gentle but strategic, beautiful but modest. powerful but invisible. It's exhausting, but you've made it an art. Now, when the younger women come to you asking how to handle court gossip, or what to do about a wandering husband, or how to conceal the smell of a miscarriage with cloves, you tell them, not everything, but enough. You've become their quiet mother, and they in turn begin watching your movements. They follow you to the garden. They ask questions about herbs. They bring you tea without being asked. One even calls you my lady of medicine. You laugh softly, hardly you say, but the name stays. Because while kings build towers and soldiers write sagas, you are weaving something far more subtle, a legacy that won't be written in the official chronicles, but will pass from hand to hand, from girl to girl, long after your image fades from the painted tapestries. Morning comes with bells. They ring through the thick mist that clings to the palace walls, peeling you from your dreams. You blink into the half-light, waiting for the sound to mean something, and then it does. A royal visitor. You sit up slowly, joints creaking in protest. The bells never ring for anything small, not for a merchant, not for a marriage proposal, and certainly not for you. Your maid rushes in before you've fully woken, already rambling about protocol and breakfast arrangements. You wave her quiet. Who is it? A delegation from the north, she says, breathless. And the Duke of Elveston, with his wife. The name sours your stomach. You knew the Duke once years ago when your son was still cutting his first teeth, and your daughter played in the halls without shoes. He courted your cousin. She refused him. Then she vanished to a convent, and he married someone else quickly, suspiciously. Historians still argue what happened to her. You don't, you know. You rise, let them dress you. Gold trim today. Hair twisted into something stately. Your jewels are modest but well chosen. Let them see you've aged, yes, but with purpose. With precision. No wilting here. You take your seat beside your husband at the great banquet. He nods to you, that's it. A nod. The Duke arrives with a full entourage. His wife, younger than you remembered, has eyes like polished flint. She curtsies deeply, and you notice the trembling just before she straightens. Interesting. Introductions blur. Toasts are made. You're presented with a gilded box of dried apricots and a bundle of foreign spices. You thank them with a smile that doesn't touch your eyes. The talk shifts to trade, then to borders, then to potential betrothals. Your daughter's name is mentioned. You freeze, but only inside. Outwardly, you sip wine. Slowly, quietly. Then glance toward the Duke's wife, who is now picking at her bread like it's made of thorns. Later, when the hall has emptied and only shadows remain, you find her in the corridor outside the chapel. Alone. Her gown is creased. Her eyes are wet. You don't speak, not yet. She turns. Her lips twitch with a dozen unsaid things. Does it get easier? She asks finally. You look at her. At the bruise just beneath her ear, cleverly powdered. At the stitched hem, hastily mended. At the way her hands tremble when still. No, you say, but it gets quieter. She nods. You hand her a small pouch herbs wrapped in silk. Sleep, you say softly, for pain and dreams. She doesn't thank you, but when she leaves, her shoulders are a little straighter. These moments are becoming more frequent. The visits, the questions, the fear behind the eyes of noble women smiling too hard. You realize you're no longer part of the generation they envy. You're the one they survive through. There's power in that. Your husband doesn't notice. He's busy planning a tournament for your son's 12th name day. A full procession. Jousts, minstrels, deer pies as large as bassinets. He's already talking about who will knight the boy. You suggest someone wise. He suggests someone wealthy. Your son listens quietly, then later asks you if he has to wear the lion crest. Can't I choose something smaller? A hawk maybe, or a fox. You smile. You'll wear what they expect you say, but you'll think whatever you like. He grins. He's beginning to understand the rules. Your daughter is another matter. She's bolder now, sharper. She reads without being told. She asks questions during sermons. She questions answers that come too easily. She has learned your silences, but she doesn't like them. I don't want to be someone's contract, she says one evening. No one wants to be you answer. But sometimes it's the only way into the room. She scowls. What if I want to build my own room? You pause, then lean in. Then make sure the door locks from the inside. She nods. She's already planning something. You can feel it. Word spreads through the court that the queen is wise, that she knows things, that she listens. And with that reputation comes the inevitable someone tries to silence you. A bishop proposes a new advisory council for matters of morality and womanly virtue. On it, 3 priests, your husband's aunt, and a baroness who once tried to have you replaced. You are not included. Your husband calls it a minor formality. You request a private audience. It is the first time in years you raise your voice to him. He listens. He does not interrupt. When you finish, he says it's only meant to assist. You reply, then assist elsewhere. He dismisses the council 2 days later. He doesn't thank you, but he does start asking your opinion more often. Quietly and private, progress in this world is measured not in revolutions but in sideways glances and canceled meetings. You're careful. You never take credit. You let others boast. You let others fall. And slowly the web tightens. You've become the woman they visit when they need something done but cannot be seen doing it. And somehow that's more satisfying than power ever looked from a throne. The snow arrives early this year. It coats the battlements in silence, settles on the windowsills like ash from some long-forgotten fire, and mutes the clamor of the courtyard below. The castle becomes quieter, slower, wrapped in frost and ceremony. With winter comes confinement. Not of pregnancy this time, though. That too exists, ever looming, but of schedule. Of body, of breath. Fireplaces sputter. Braziers hiss. Furs are brought out of cedar chests and draped over everything, including you. You spend more time indoors, which means more time with the women. It's easy to forget how many of them there are. They blend in maids, widows, wives of knights, daughters of minor lords, silent, watchful, tirelessly busy. They serve mend powder poor. They know who eats what, who drinks too much, who limps, who lies. They are the true scribes of the palace, though none of them write. You begin gathering them. Not formally, of course, that would be scandalous. Instead, you host quiet evenings in your solar. Tea and embroidery. Some bring books, others bring bruises. You speak of nothing important and everything that matters. No one talks politics, yet somehow every topic leads there. You teach them little things, how to read a ledger, how to recognize false praise, how to mask their intentions with compliments about lacework. They soak it up like thirsty ground. The youngest one, Ameline, is just 13 and already sharper than most bishops. You give her a broken brooch to repair. She returns it fixed, polished, and altered so cleverly it fastens more securely than it ever had before. You smile. You'll be dangerous one day. She blushes. I hope so. You're building something now, something that no one would call a revolution, at least not yet. A web, a circle, a whispered movement stitched into the hems of gowns and tucked between the lines of lullabies. Historians still debate whether medieval queens engaged in networks of resistance or simply exercised influence within their domestic sphere. But they miss the point. The domestic was the sphere. It held everything, and you're rearranging the walls from within. Your husband, ever the seasonal monarch, has taken to sleeping in a separate chamber for warmth. He visits when he wishes, leaves without explanation. You don't mind. His absence is easier to manage than his moods. Sometimes during council meetings, he repeats ideas you shared in private, word for word. He does not credit you naturally, but he looks at you afterward and something in his eyes flickers understanding, or perhaps guilt. You never ask which. Instead, you begin corresponding with his sister. She lives at another court far to the west and possesses both a scandalous sense of humor and a dangerous amount of free time. She sends poems, you send advice. Together, you begin to quietly orchestrate a marriage that benefits both realms without either king realizing it was your idea. It works, of course. You celebrate by planting 3 new rose bushes in the frost-covered garden. They won't bloom for months, but that's not the point. Your daughter has grown tall. Too tall, she complains. She hates corsets, hates dancing, hates being told to smile. You nod. One day, she enters your chamber holding a folded parchment. A letter, sealed with the Duke's crest, the one from the banquet. A marriage proposal. You read it twice, then set it in the fire. She watches it burn without speaking. Later, your husband will ask what happened to the offer. You'll say truthfully that your daughter was not inclined. He will not press. He knows better now. Your son begins to chafe at his lessons. He finds Latin tedious, French tolerable, heraldry intolerable. What he really wants, he says, is to see things, forests, rivers, ships. You allow him a short journey, just a few days' ride. A supervised hunting trip with trusted men and a well-memorized map. When he returns windblown and alive with stories, he hugs you tightly. Not out of protocol, just because. Your ladies pretend not to notice your eyes shine. That night, you sew until your fingers bleed. The pattern is of vines circling a hawk. You don't know what it means yet, but you stitch it anyway. The court shifts again in winter stillness. The archbishop dies. A baroness flees her estate. A steward is caught siphoning grain and disappears before he can be questioned. And yet the world does not end. You're reminded how easily the great can fall. How loudly nothing is said when it's inconvenient. So you write everything down. You've started a second journal. Not of thoughts, but of facts, names, dates, incidents, secrets. A chronicle no one will read until it's needed most. You hide it well. Because while others seek power in gold and land and armies, you know, the real currency is information. You've learned to trade it in glances, in soft corrections, in invitations offered and rescinded. You don't seek revenge, that's too theatrical. You simply wait and adjust and survive. In a world where everyone wants something, you've learned to become the thing they need. And slowly, carefully, you've made yourself irreplaceable. Your ink stains everything these days. The tips of your fingers are perpetually smudged charcoal gray at first, then slowly fading to pale blue as the parchment dries. You've taken to wearing darker gloves at court, so no one notices how much time you now spend writing. Not love letters, not prayers, records. You write in the early hours before the castle stirs, while the fires are still low and the corridors echo only with wind. Your candle flickers beside you, short and stubborn, as your quill scratches lines onto soft vellum. What you're compiling isn't just a diary, it's a ledger of truth. Not the truth they teach the scribes to copy, the triumphant, polished, self-congratulatory version, but the other one. The sideways truth. The things you see in the corners of rooms. The decisions made with a nod instead of a seal. You document your husband's shifts in mood and the steward's sudden wealth. You note which noblemen grow quiet after a certain meal, and which maids no longer return from errands they were supposed to complete in the lower village. It is not scandal you record, it is pattern. Historians still argue whether queens like you wielded power behind the throne, or merely watched from the shadows. You would argue that watching is power if you do it long enough and write it down carefully. Your journal is hidden behind the 5th stone of your bedroom fireplace. Loose enough to pry out, firm enough to escape suspicion. Someday it may save you, or someone else. Your daughter has begun leaving you notes. Folded corners of parchment slipped into your sewing basket or left between the pages of a hymn book. They're always brief. Lady Agnes's son lied again. Did you see how Sir Kenrick looked at the nursemaid? They've started calling me the Little Queen. I don't hate it. You write back in kind. Yes, he did. Watch his hands next time. I did. We'll move her to the northern wing. And they should. But stay quiet. Let them think you haven't noticed. It's a game now, a dance in ink. The two of you building a world beneath the one the men believe they rule. Your son, meanwhile, has discovered maps. He sits cross-legged by the hearth with rolled parchment spread around him like the sails of a grounded ship. He draws routes with charcoal, marks forests, rivers, valleys you've only ever heard described in court poetry. You join him sometimes. He shows you a mountain pass excited. If I ruled this stretch, he says I'd build a road here. Then no merchant could be robbed in the bend. You raise an eyebrow. That would cost a great deal of coin. He grins. That's what taxes are for. You smile. Not because of the idea, but because he said if I ruled. Not when. He's starting to understand that the crown is not a gift, but a burden. One that must be earned, not simply worn. You arrange for his tutor to be replaced with someone less self-impressed. Your husband notices, of course he does, but says nothing. He's grown quieter with age. Still sharp when provoked, but more often preoccupied. He rides less, sleeps more, favors softer foods and quieter music. He mentions his legacy now and then in the same breath as land charters and succession clauses. You nod when he speaks of it. But your thoughts are elsewhere. Because legacy is not in stone. It's in memory. One morning your mother-in-law falls ill. She's not young, though she's always pretended to be. The physicians bustle in with their bitter syrups and steaming poultices, but before they speak, she's fading. You sit with her. Not out of duty, not exactly out of affection either, but because she sat with you once when your first son died. It was a single hour. Neither of you spoke. But she stayed. Now it's your turn. She grips your wrist with more strength than expected. Don't let them, she whispers. You don't ask who she means. You already know. She dies that night. The mourning period is swift, expected, polished. You wear black and stand beside your husband in the chapel. You pretend not to notice how many courtiers already angle toward the younger noblewomen with new marriage ties to arrange. The court forgets the dead quickly. You do not. You go through her things yourself, a courtesy no one expects. You find a silver comb, a letter from your father never opened, and a small notebook worn at the corners filled with medicinal recipes and spidery script. You keep it. You take her place at ceremonial functions, the dowager role, the matriarch. You don't hate it. You use it. Young women now seek your guidance without pretense. They sit at your feet. They tell you everything. You do not judge. You listen. You suggest. You plant seeds. One day someone brings you a book. It is handwritten, bound in green cloth. A gift from a monk who copied it from an older text banned 3 kings ago. It contains stories of queens real and mythical who ruled in shadow and silence and brilliance. You read it twice, then lend it to your daughter. She reads it once, then copies the names into her journal. You kiss her goodnight that evening and whisper, they'll tell you it's not your story. I know she says they're wrong. Outside the snow begins again. Inside something else begins too. You are watching a play. Not a real one, though. Minstrels still perform sometimes in the Great Hall, and you always clap politely, even when the acting is dreadful. No, this is the play of court life itself. And you've seen this performance before. The new girl arrives. She's young, of course. Wide-eyed, carefully dressed her hair, styled to look effortless, though it's taken 2 maids and an hour to coil. She speaks too quickly, bows too deeply, tries too hard. She's eager, innocent, perfect. And she's already sitting too close to your husband. You watch it unfold like a well-worn script. First the glances, then the laughter, then the subtle invitations to dine, walk, ride, discuss poetry. That one always makes you smile. No one says anything, not directly, but the mood shifts like someone letting cold air into a warm room. Whispers follow her like perfume. The older women roll their eyes, the younger ones take notes. You remember when it was you, when the room shifted around you, but you're not jealous. Truly, you've evolved past that. Jealousy belongs to those who still believe they can win a man's loyalty by being beautiful enough, clever enough, compliant enough. You know better now. Men don't choose loyalty, they choose opportunity and forget what they had until it vanishes quietly in the middle of the night, taking the chessboard with it. So you smile. And wait, your daughter asks about the girl. Why does she speak like that? Like what? Like she's asking permission to breathe. You laugh softly, because no one ever taught her that she doesn't have to. Later that week, the girl is caught in a corridor, nothing scandalous, just misplaced at the wrong hour. She bursts into tears when questioned. The story makes its way to you within an hour. You send her a gift, a fine hair comb, a sprig of lavender, and a note with 4 words. You are not prey. She never thanks you. She doesn't have to. The next time you see her, she sits farther from your husband, speaks more softly, listens more, learns faster. She'll be fine. Meanwhile, you host a gathering. Just a few women. Just the ones who understand the language of glances, omissions, and strategically placed absences. You talk about books, about gardens, about the latest sumptuary laws that forbid certain sleeve widths for lower nobility. Then someone brings up the Duchess who vanished last spring. You all sip tea and change the subject. But that night you write her name in your ledger. The truth is you trust no one completely now, not even your friends, not even yourself. Not because you're paranoid, but because you've seen too much. Trust in this world is a luxury, one you traded for survival. You've become very good at surviving. And more than that, you've become good at performing survival in such a way that people assume you are thriving. That's the real trick. Even your husband now defers to you in public. It's subtle. A pause before speaking, a glance in your direction, a change in tone if you raise an eyebrow. People think it's respect. It's not. It's calculation. He's realized that you've become necessary. Not loved, not cherished. Necessary. You'd laugh if it weren't so exhausting. There's a kind of power in being needed, but it's a cold kind. The kind that keeps you standing but never lets you sit. And you are tired. Oh, you wear it well. Silks hide a multitude of aches. Jewels distract from sleepless eyes. You still command the room when you enter because you have trained it to respond. But inside there are days when you ache to disappear. Not in disgrace, not in scandal. Just quietly. Into a cottage with a thatched roof and no titles. A place where you can rise at dawn, bake something, walk barefoot in the grass and be nobody. You'll never have that. But some days when you sit by the fire with your shoes off and the children asleep, you pretend. You let yourself drift. The fire crackles. Your quill rests on the desk. The cat, yes, there's a cat now, an ugly little thing that chose you without asking, snores in your lap. And for a moment you're not queen, not wife, not mother. Just you. Until the knock comes. Always the knock. It's your lady in waiting. Her face is pale. There's news from the coast, she says. You nod. Of course there is. There's always news from the coast. A ship has arrived. With it a nobleman carrying documents, proposals, expectations. Marriage. Your daughter again. You exhale slowly. The winter never ends. You sit at the writing desk with the letter open before you, the ink still damp enough to glisten in the afternoon light. The seal bears the emblem of a coastal duchy, familiar, powerful, and historically inconvenient. The letter is not rude, but it doesn't need to be. It speaks in the polished language of diplomacy, where every with deepest admiration is a demand in silk, and every humble inquiry is a threat with nice handwriting. They want your daughter, not as a guest, not for fosterage, not for friendship, for marriage. You read it again, then fold it neatly, precisely. You knew this would come. You've known since the moment she was born. But now that the proposal is in your hand, heavy with heraldry and foreign ink, it feels like you've been handed a map with no return route. Your daughter is 17, sharp, self-possessed, and startlingly tall. She walks like someone who's used to being watched. You taught her that how to let eyes slide off her when needed, how to hold them when it's dangerous to do so. She's not surprised when you tell her. She simply nods. When do I leave? You blink. You're not being sent. She frowns. Aren't I? And there it is. That little question, so quiet, so heavy. You don't answer immediately. Instead, you unlace your gloves, set them aside. Pour 2 cups of warm milk with honey. Then you sit beside her, not across. A queen and a girl. A mother and the woman she raised to carry knives inside her lullabies. Do you want to go, you ask? She pauses, then shrugs. It depends. Is he boring? You laugh. The sound surprises both of you. That's not in the letter. Typical, she mutters. You hand her the parchment. She scans it faster than you expect. Points to the second paragraph. Ah, here. He's devout. That means boring. You don't say what you're thinking. That also means he will expect obedience. And silence. And likely bruises hidden beneath prayers. She must see it in your face, though, because she leans back and says, You don't have to protect me. I know you lie. You send a reply a few days later. A deferment. Not a no, but not a yes. Enough to buy time. Your husband reads it, raises one brow, says nothing. You've begun noticing how often he says nothing now. Perhaps it's age. Perhaps it's habit. Perhaps he's learned that the less he speaks, the more he seems to agree with you. Your son says he doesn't like the duchy. They sent spoiled fruit last Christmas, he says, as if that alone is reason enough to dissolve centuries of alliance. You let him believe it is. He's grown into his limbs finally. The awkwardness is fading, replaced by a quiet confidence that looks suspiciously familiar. One evening you find him in the library rereading letters. Old ones, your letters. I wanted to see how you wrote when you were younger, he says. You pause. And you sounded sharper. You smile. I was trying to survive. He nods, not as a child, but as a man who now understands what that costs. I want to be better, he says. Then listen more than you speak. I've been watching you. Then you're already halfway there. He returns to his reading, and you to yours. That winter, a noblewoman from the southern provinces visits the court. She brings 6 trunks of lace, a troupe of lute players, and 5 daughters with eyes like daggers and perfume, strong enough to raise the dead. It's a performance. You recognize it instantly. Her eldest daughter is steered toward your son. Carefully. Casually. At every banquet, every stroll in the gardens, every seating arrangement at Mass. Your son notices, as does your daughter, and both say nothing. You, however, do not let it pass. You invite the noblewoman for tea, just the 2 of you. Your chamber is warm, cozy. The fire crackles. The cat, still ugly, still judgmental, glares from a cushioned stool. The noblewoman compliments your curtains, your embroidery, your skin. You smile. Then softly, your daughter is charming. She beams. Please make sure she stays that way. Her smile tightens. Of course. You pour more tea. Add honey and say nothing more. She leaves the next morning, without explanation. Court gossip suggests she took ill. You allow the story to live. Your ladies know better. There's a rhythm now to your power. It flows not in declarations, but in suggestions, in who sits where, who is invited, who is not. You're not feared. You're respected, which in court terms is far more permanent. One of your ladies is caught stealing from the wine cellar. She is young, foolish, frightened. You speak to her privately. She expects rage, punishment. Instead, you offer a choice. You can leave tonight, with coin, with silence. Or you can stay and learn something useful. She stays. 3 months later, she uncovers a steward's mismanagement of grain. You reward her publicly. The others take note. Your daughter, watching all of this, begins to mirror your gestures. She smooths her skirts when lying, tilts her head when someone avoids a question. She writes lists. She starts locking her desk. One night, she asks, will it always be this hard? You pause. No. She looks relieved. Eventually, you add it becomes normal. And somehow that's worse. But she nods. Good. I like normal. You know she doesn't. She likes control. She likes clarity. She just hasn't admitted it yet. You kiss her forehead. You'll be fine, you say. And this time you don't have to lie. You wake before the bells. It's habit now, not necessity. The castle sleeps around you, wrapped in stone and snow, and you rise like someone summoned not by duty, but by memory. You light a small lamp. Pull your shawl tighter. Walk the same corridor you've walked every morning for years. Each floorboard knows your weight. Each tapestry knows your breath. Outside the garden is frozen over. The fountain sits silent, encased in frost, its once lively stream stilled like a held breath. The roses are gone, of course, but the thorns remain. You rather like that. Back in your chamber, a letter awaits you. It's sealed in green wax, foreign, familiar. The duchy again. A revised proposal. They are persistent. This time it's more flattering, deep admiration. Unmatched alliance, a bride fit for a throne. They've added titles, lands, 2 trunks of silk, and promises of safety and piety. It reeks of desperation wrapped in velvet. You read it twice, then burn it in the hearth. No reply. Your daughter enters as the ashes settle. She glances at the scorched parchment and raises one brow. Good fire. Very. She crosses to the table and sets down a satchel. I'm going to visit the abbey today. I want to see their scriptorium. You nod. Tell the abbess I send my regards. She says you're overdue for a visit. She says that every year. Your daughter smiles. You always promise and never go. You sip your tea. That's how you keep them wanting. She laughs and leaves with a wave and a small knife hidden in her sleeve. You don't ask why, you taught her to do that. Your son is away touring the northern provinces with a band of guards and a traveling tutor. He sends letters brief, often smudged with rain. They always end with, I'm watching, just like you said. He signs them with a hawk. You think of him often now. How tall he's become. How rarely he asks for approval. How much he looks like your husband when he broods. And how much he looks like you when he's listening. One day he'll sit on a throne. You wonder what kind of throne it will be. Back at court, the pageantry continues. Feasts, tournaments, christenings. One of your husband's distant relatives has named his newborn after your son, a show of loyalty, he says. You send a silver cup and decline the invitation. There's talk of expanding the stables, of commissioning new icons for the chapel, of building another guest wing. The court is thriving on the surface. But beneath it you sense the creaks, whispers of poor harvests in the east. A merchant accused of heresy. A noble's son missing after a hunting trip that was never officially recorded. You ask no direct questions, but you listen. You ask for financial reports, you inspect the wine shipments, you smile when the steward stammers. In your solar, your circle grows. More women, more stories. One has lost 3 children to fever. Another cannot read but had memorized every grain inventory for the past year. A third arrives with ink-stained fingers and a bundle of contraband manuscripts hidden in a basket of dried pears. You listen, you teach, you write. You don't call it anything, but they do. They call it the room. They call you the quiet crown. One day a girl barely 12 approaches you during Vespers. She is shaking. My mother says you help people. You take her hand, gently. What do you need? My brother is hurting the maid. She won't tell anyone. You look at her, really look, and you say she just did. That evening the boy is sent away. Quietly. No scandal, no noise. You arrange for the maid to serve in your daughter's household. She is paid double. No one asks why. Power you've found is most effective when people think it isn't being used. Your husband grows slower now. His cough lingers. His appetite wanes. The physicians say age. You say guilt. He speaks more often of legacy, of peace, of burial places. You do not comfort him. You are not unkind, but you are no longer soft. He asks you one night if you regret it. Regret what? This life, me, all of it. You look at him, really look for the first time in months. I regret nothing, you say, but I remember everything. He closes his eyes. You sit beside him until the candle burns low. Outside, the wind howls like it always does in winter, curling around the spires, tugging at banners too tired to resist. Inside, you put down the quill, stretch your fingers. Your daughter will return in the morning. Your son will write again next week. The girls in the room will meet tomorrow. And you will keep watching. Because someone must. It begins with a cough. Your husband excuses himself from supper, muttering about the smoke from the hearth, the draught in the western wing, the roast being too dry. You nod. You do not follow, but the cough returns, louder the next day, wet the next. By the end of the week, he is bedridden, and the physician has been summoned from 3 towns away. You are not surprised. He is old not by years, but by weight. The weight of wars, of mistakes, of decisions made in candlelight with hands that should have been steadier. He has been growing quieter for some time, thinning around the edges like vellum left in sun. Now he is translucent with fever. You sit beside him. He asks you if the bishop has come. You tell him yes. He asks if his seal is safe. You say it is. He asks if the people love him. You pause, and then you say they will remember you. That is enough for him. Your daughter brings lavender for his room. Your son is sent for. The physician speaks of humors and drafts and the alignment of the stars. You say nothing, because you know he lingers for days, moaning, mumbling, grasping at invisible reins. He speaks to ghosts, his father, a former steward, a brother he betrayed for land and forgot until now. His last words are half a prayer and half your name, then silence, and you are alone. Not in the literal sense. The room fills quickly, priests, nobles, servants, weepers. The court must witness. Death must be seen to be real. But you feel in that moment hollowed, not broken, just emptied. Because this man, this husband you were bound to, who bruised you with absence and flattered you with forgetfulness, was also the foundation of the life you've built. Flawed, failing, familiar, and now he's gone. You dress in black. You do not cry. Crying is not for the queen. There is a funeral. Long, processional. Filled with incense eulogies and noblemen who pretend they loved him more than they feared him. Your son walks behind the coffin with steady steps. Your daughter stands beside you, her jaw set. The court watches your every movement. You do not falter. Afterward the question comes. Not spoken, not yet, but felt. What happens now? A realm without a king is a shaking table. Even with an heir, there are always hands reaching for legs beneath the cloth. Your son is of age barely, and tall, handsome, polite, but not yet feared. You take no chances. The morning after the funeral, you call the council. Not your son, you. Some raise brows, others remain silent. One speaks. But your grace, you are not. You tilt your head. Not what, he swallows his objection. You proceed. You set the tone for what will follow a smooth transition. A court without scandal, a regency if necessary, but most of all, no room for question. You issue orders, reshuffle stewards, appoint your most trusted ladies to roles their husbands were too dim to hold. You do not ask for permission, because you've already earned it. In silence, in years, in survival. Your son watches it all with wide eyes. Later in private, he says, I thought I was supposed to be king. You will be, you say, but not all at once. He frowns, and you pause. I will always be what I've had to be. And then you place the crown in his hands, not the one with gold and jewels, but the invisible one. The weight of consequence. Don't mistake ceremony for power, you tell him. One is worn, the other is wielded. He nods. That night you finally sleep. A deep, dreamless sleep. The kind you haven't had in decades. Not since your first wedding night. Not since your first child. Not since your first betrayal dressed as a kiss. And in the morning you wake to silence. But not fear. For the first time in your life, there is no one standing between you and your decisions. No husband to placate, no mother-in-law to endure, no bishop to pacify, no suitor to fend off, just you. In a palace you now command not by marriage, but by memory. They call you the Widow Queen now. Not a title you asked for, but one you wear like armor, and beneath that something else stirs. Possibility. You begin receiving letters from abbesses, from widowed countesses, from younger queens in foreign courts. They ask for advice, for help, for truth. You respond to everyone, some with instructions, some with herbs, some with silence, because silence too can be a language of power. One asks how to protect herself from a dangerous uncle. You send a recipe that causes vomiting and subtle confusion. A servant in her kitchen sees to it. Another asks how to convince her council to allow her daughter to inherit. You send the name of a scribe who has a miraculous talent for forging just the right historical precedent. You become without ceremony something greater than queen. You become necessary, essential. You become the voice they hear in their own. And still you keep writing, not in the hidden journal now, but in the open. You begin compiling your thoughts, your rules, your warnings, not as memoir, not as confession, as preparation. Because one day some girl somewhere will inherit a crown that's heavier than it looks. And when she does, she'll need more than lace and lineage. She'll need you. They want to paint you. Of course they do. A new era, a new regency, a new portrait. The court artist arrives with his brushes and his oil-stained hands and his thinly veiled nerves. He's painted saints and generals and one famously sullen bishop, but never a queen without a king. He asks what pose you'd prefer. You say seated, holding nothing. He blinks. No scepter. You shake your head. I already have one. It's just not for show. He begins sketching. You sit motionless in a high-backed chair. A velvet cushion beneath your spine, though you refuse to lean on it. Your hands rest lightly on the arms, no rings, no jewels, no crown. Only your face. Lined, sharp, unapologetic. He hesitates. Would you like me to soften anything? You smile. The kind of smile that once meant danger. No, the portrait takes weeks. During that time, your daughter oversees preparations for the spring festival. Your son negotiates with foreign emissaries, occasionally glancing at the script you wrote in the margins of his speech. You receive a letter from a distant duchess. She has heard of your network. She wants in. You burn the letter after memorizing it. Because the more they know, the more they risk. And you know the cost of visibility. You've survived long enough to know when to be seen and when to vanish. That's the real dance. There are moments now rare but present when you allow yourself to feel peace. Not happiness. You don't trust that word anymore. Happiness is fleeting a spring breeze in a world of stone walls and obligations. But peace is different. Peace is a quiet chamber, a steaming cup, a daughter reading with her feet tucked under a cat, a son who no longer flinches at the weight of expectation. Peace is earned, and you have earned it. But the world as ever does not sleep for long. One evening during a storm, a courier arrives, soaked, pale, eyes wide. He brings a sealed message and a bruise across his jaw. A rebellion. Not large, not yet. A distant lord claiming your son is illegitimate. That your marriage was forged in sin. That you bewitched the king. You sit very still. The fire crackles behind you. Your hands do not shake. The courier waits, expecting fury. Fear? You nod, give the lad dry clothes and a hot meal. Later you send letters to 5 women, each in a different region, each with different skills. One knows how to find hidden exits. One knows how to bribe priests. One once ended a siege with a rumor. They understand without needing instructions. The rebellion will be snuffed out within a fortnight. But that's not the point. The point is you were ready. Your son storms into your solar when he hears, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" You meet his gaze. Because you still believe you can fix everything with honor. He frowns, and you don't. I believe in honor, you say. I just don't gamble kingdoms on it. He doesn't respond. But later that night, he asks you to review his next speech. Progress. The artist returns with your portrait, covered in linen. He unveils it with the flourish of someone who's either very confident or very afraid. You study it in silence. It is not beautiful. It is true. You look tired, powerful. A woman who has survived decades in a house designed to devour her. Your hands are visible, no rings, just the faint ink stains. Your eyes are not soft, they are steady. You nod. It will do. He exhales with relief. You have it hung in your private chamber, not the grand hall, not the chapel, not the gallery. Just here, where it can look back at you. One day your daughter will sit in this chair, or one like it. She will have her own storms, her own rebellion, her own portrait. And when she does, she'll know. She'll remember how you wore your silence like armor, how you turned bruises into strategies, how you built a network not of armies but of eyes. She'll know the truth of power, not the ceremony, not the procession, not the gold leaf and the marble steps, but the truth that lives in corners, in corridors, in the ink of letters burned after reading. You visit the garden that evening. The wild roses have bloomed early. You crouch slowly now and run your hand along one of the thorns. Still sharp, still dangerous. You smile, because so are you. Spring arrives not with a trumpet, but with the softest sigh. The castle windows open for the first time in months. You smell damp stone, thawing earth, the first blush of honeysuckle creeping along the lower gardens. Servants move more lightly. The birds return. Even the walls seem to relax. You walk the grounds daily now. Not for ceremony, those strolls were always stiff, choreographed exhausting. These walks are for you. Quiet steps. No entourage. Just the occasional blackbird startled into flight, and the familiar creak of your boots on gravel. You carry no parasol. You do not need shade. One afternoon you pass a group of young noble women clustered beneath the east terrace. They fall silent as you approach. Too silent. You pause. Look at them. One drops her eyes, another holds your gaze just a second too long. You don't say anything. You nod and keep walking. By nightfall, a rumor reaches your solar. They've begun calling you the Queen of Thorns. It's not meant kindly, but you rather like it, because by now your legend is growing. You hear it in the way visiting envoys measure their words, in the way scribes linger before recording court minutes, in the way your daughter's friends treat her like a person made of flint and flame. And not because of her lineage, because of you. Still, legends are unwieldy things. They grow, they tangle, they attract attention. And attention is not always useful. A friar arrives at court, young, charismatic, clever. He preaches humility, obedience, the natural order. You hear your name in his sermons, even when it isn't said. Some women he murmurs from the pulpit believe themselves more capable than men appointed by God. You attend the next mass. You sit in the front row. He stammers. Afterward, you approach him. You do not threaten. You do not scold. You offer him a gift, a well-copied treatise from a cloistered abbess known for her theological precision. Perhaps you'll find it enlightening, you say, smiling. He leaves the next day. No one fills his vacancy. You're not cruel. You've never needed to be. Cruelty is clumsy. Power properly sharpened is precise. Still, the moment unsettles you, because it reminds you that no matter how carefully you've built your house of influence, the storm is always circling. The world does not like women like you. It tolerates them until it doesn't. So you continue building. More letters, more gardens, more women slipping through corridors with whispers wrapped in ribbon. You begin writing again something new this time. Not the ledgers, not the secrets, not even the instructions you've quietly passed along for years. This is a book, a guide, a record. You don't know what to call it, but you know who it's for. For the girl 5 generations from now who's been married at 13 to a man twice her age. For the widow who must manage an estate no one taught her to read. For the queen who smiles at her coronation and weeps in her chambers because no one warned her how loud the silence gets. You write by candlelight, slowly, carefully. Each word a seed. One chapter is titled How to Tell When They're Lying, another How to Say No Without Saying No, and one simply reads, You are not a decoration. Your daughter reads the pages sometimes curled at your feet like she did when she was a child. She doesn't ask questions, she just nods. Your son returns from a visit to a border province. He's taller, tanned, tired. He asked to speak with you privately. He's thinking of marrying. Not for alliance, not for power. For love. You raise an eyebrow. Do you love her and trust her, you ask? Yes. Then do it. He exhales like he wasn't sure you'd say yes. You pull him close. And whisper, then protect her. He nods. You say nothing else. Because he knows what that means now. Weeks later, the girl arrives. She is nervous, polished, honest, not yet ironed flat by court etiquette. You sit with her in the garden, pour her tea, ask her nothing at all. She talks anyway. You like her. She'll learn quickly. You gift her a pouch of mint and rose hips, a silent welcome. And so it continues. The court shifts around you, the seasons change, nobles come and go, but you remain. And they've stopped asking when you'll retire. They know you never will. You do not age quietly, you age deliberately. Each wrinkle is a map of survival. Each gray hair a boundary crossed. You are not fading, you are crystallizing. One evening your portrait is unveiled at a feast, the official one commissioned by the realm. Larger than life, gold frame, hung beside your late husband's. You had no say in it. You expect something flattering, something false. Instead, it is accurate. You look stern, steady, not cruel, not sweet. A queen, not a dream. You nod to the artist. He bows relieved. You watch your daughter study it, her expression unreadable. Later, you find her alone in the corridor. She says they'll never forget you. You touch her cheek. That's not the point. Then what is... You pause. Then that you remember who you are. She smiles. You walk the halls together. Two women in silence, one legend forming, one legend already written. And somewhere behind you, the servants whisper, The Queen of Thorns walks again. They ask to name a hall after you. Not a chapel, not a statue, a hall. A long, sunlit corridor in the eastern wing, recently rebuilt after a storm cracked its foundations. It now bears high-arched windows and marble floors echoing with the footsteps of ambassadors and heirs. The Hall of Grace, one minister proposes. You smile blandly. No, you say. Call it the Hall of Silence. He laughs until he realizes you're serious. Because silence, you know, is the most powerful thing in this castle. Not the kind that comes from absence, but the kind you've honed into an edge. The kind that listens, watches, waits, holds its breath just long enough for the world to shift. They name it the Hall of Silence. They paint it in soft whites and grays. They line the walls with tapestries of woven stories, none of them yours. Not openly, but you recognize your own work in every thread. Your son takes to ruling like a fish to slow water. Steady, reluctant, thoughtful. He hesitates more than his advisors like. That's how you know he's going to be good at it. He marries the girl he loves, a small ceremony by royal standards. You wear silver. She wears a dress without embroidery. They say their vows under a tree in the orchard, not beneath a vaulted ceiling. Afterward, she sits beside you on a bench and holds your hand. Thank you, she says. You squeeze her fingers. Later that month, you give her a book. Not your ledger, not your guide. A new one. Unlabeled, unbound, empty. Fill this, you say, with what she asks. With what you learn. She blinks, then nods. You've started sleeping longer. Not from weakness, from peace. Your ladies grow older with you. Some leave court for cloisters. Some retire to their family estates. Some remain. You begin calling them by their first names again. Your daughter travels often now, visiting abbeys, hosting assemblies, helping widows manage land their sons haven't yet earned. She's earning her own legend. One day she returns with a question. What happens if we write it down? The truth, she nods. You'll need a fortress. We have one. No, you gesture to your chest. Here. She starts writing. In 10 years' time, people will read it and claim it's fiction. Too sharp, too clever, too real. In 50, they'll say she never wrote it at all. But she will know, and you'll have lived long enough to see the words take root. You no longer sit at the high table for feasts. By your own choice. You prefer a smaller table near the fire surrounded by women who don't care about rank, only warmth. You eat slowly now. You sip broth. You do not dress for battle anymore, but your sleeves still hide the faint ink stains of years spent writing things that mattered. The old bishop dies, the one who once questioned your son's legitimacy, the one who said a woman couldn't govern a realm. At the memorial, no one mentions his name more than once. You do not attend. You send a single lily. That says enough. You find yourself visiting the library more. Not to read, just to walk, to run your fingers along the spines. You find a book once gifted to your husband, unused, uncut pages. You leave it on the scribe's desk without a note. The scribe sends you a finished copy a month later. You write less, but when you do, the words arrive fully formed as if they've waited patiently in the shadows of your ribs. You still keep your original journal. You've added margins to it now. Notes to your past self, corrections, laughter. On one page where you once wrote, "I am alone," you now add, "but not forever." The cat is older, slower. It prefers your lap to the window now. You let it stay even when its claws snag your velvet. Your portrait remains in your private chamber. It gathers dust. You never clean it. You've outlived 4 kings, 2 uprisings, 1 papal scandal, and a siege that never even made it past the front gates. You've outlived your enemies and some of your regrets. The Hall of Silence still bears your name. And now, when the sun slants just right, your grandchildren run through it, laughing, trailing ribbons and breadcrumbs and half-finished songs. They call you grandmother. They do not know what you were. Not yet. But one day they'll ask, and your daughter will tell them. She'll sit them down, unwrap the silk from an old book, and say, "Let me tell you about a woman who wore silence like a crown." And in that moment you will live again, not in stone, not in ink, but in memory. The light has changed. You feel it more than you see it. It moves differently through the windows, warmer, slower golden in a way that softens even the sharpest corners of stone. The tapestries look older, but somehow more beautiful. The dust doesn't bother you like it once did. You wake each morning not to duty but to stillness. You do not rush. There is no rush anymore. You've lived through seasons of urgency, of preparation, of calculation, of waiting for someone to knock or accuse or beg. You've lived through silence that roared and through company that chafed like ill-cut brocade. Now you sip warm milk at dawn. Now you choose which letters to answer. Now you listen more than you speak, and when you do speak, everyone listens. Your daughter rules now. Not officially, not with a crown, not with a council, but with presence, with poise, with the kind of gaze that makes even seasoned lords pause before finishing their sentence. You taught her well. She makes mistakes, good ones, bold ones. She apologizes when needed and never twice. She visits your chamber every evening, even when court is busy. Sometimes she brings news, sometimes just a bit of bread. Always her thoughts, always her time. Your son rules well, too. Better than they expected. Softer than his father, wiser than his tutors. He learned diplomacy not from books, but from watching you. He's careful, gracious, unafraid to say, "I don't know," and quick to ask his sister when he needs to know. He reminds you that strength is not always loud. You begin leaving gifts for them, not grand ones, just things. A pressed flower, a phrase underlined in a book, a small box of stones gathered from every corner of the estate where you once walked, once listened, once planned. You know they'll understand. You spend your afternoons in the Hall of Silence now. It's funny how a room built for politics has become your favorite place for napping. Sometimes you simply sit, listening to the footsteps, the voices, the future echoing off polished stone. You watch children run past the windows. You feel a peace so quiet it's almost a presence beside you. You remember. Not everything, but enough. You remember your first wedding dress, how it pinched. You remember your second son who never cried. You remember the scent of ink in winter. You remember the night your husband died and how light the chamber suddenly felt. You remember the names of women who trusted you with truths no priest ever heard. You remember the sound of your daughter reading aloud to herself before she knew what the words meant. You remember how often silence spoke for you, and how in the end you learned to speak without ever raising your voice. The portrait still hangs in your chamber. Some days you sit across from it watching yourself, comparing, measuring the space between who you were and who you became. You are not disappointed. You are simply ready. There's no word for it. Not in the court vocabulary, not in the scripts of queenship or piety or power, but you know the feeling, like a long-held breath finally exhaled. The day it happens, it is raining. Not hard, just gently, steadily, like the sky is finally willing to weep for you now that you no longer have to. You close your eyes in the hall of silence, one hand resting on your lap, the other still faintly stained with ink. You do not make a sound, and yet somehow everyone knows. They find you like that, peaceful, upright, whole. Your daughter stands beside you first. She does not cry. She simply places her hand over yours and says quietly, "Thank you." Your son kneels. He whispers a prayer that doesn't ask for anything, just acknowledges. The court gathers, bells toll, flags dip. There will be ceremonies, tributes, statues probably. But that's not your legacy. Your legacy is in the books tucked between tapestries, in the garden path reshaped by women who remember, in the ledger your granddaughter begins to keep without being told. You are not gone. You are simply elsewhere, where silence does not mean fear, where your name is no longer whispered but passed on like a key, where every thorn that crowned you has bloomed, where everything finally is yours. Now the candle dims. The corridors are empty. The halls no longer echo with footsteps but rest gently under the hush of midnight. Even the gardens are still, the leaves unmoving, the air warm with memory. You're not walking anymore. You're floating. The dress no longer scratches, the crown no longer pinches, the ink no longer stains. You are weightless now. The palace shrinks behind you, not in grandeur but in importance. It is no longer your world, just a place you lived. A place you learned, a place you left stronger than you found it. And ahead of you, nothing urgent. No letters to draft, no births to announce, no guests to seat beside enemies. Just peace, just breath. The kind you can take in fully. The kind no one can interrupt. The kind that comes only after a lifetime of holding it. Outside, a bird sings once, then sleeps again. Somewhere a girl picks up a book you once wrote. She turns the page. Somewhere a boy writes a law that protects someone he'll never meet. And somewhere many years from now, a woman smiles at the edge of power, remembering a name they once tried to forget. The name stays, because you did. Wherever you are, I hope tonight brings you rest, comfort, and maybe a curious dream or two. I'll be here with another story for you tomorrow night.